Welcome into episode 23 of JD's Empire Sports Talk. Of course, I'm JD here with Jets specialist Ryan Downey. Yeah, I can't believe it's episode 23 already. It's gone really, really quick. We appreciate all the support. I know Jets specialist Ryan. You haven't been here for all 23 episodes. We've been here for a good amount, right? About six or
Yeah,
seven
six
now.
or seven. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have a after combine review for this week's episode. We'll get into some guys that Ryan talked about last week that maybe didn't do great, and some guys that did show out. Some guys that didn't work out. There was a lot of guys that are well known that decided not to participate for whatever reason. That's unusual. Usually, those guys still go out there and do that. Maybe they just want to do it at their pro day, or maybe they know they're guaranteed in a week draft that they're going to be drafted in that top 20 anyway, so it doesn't even matter. A very confusing combine, I could say. But before we do that, and also at the end, we'll talk about what's next with free agency. But before we do that, some big news that came out. Well, I think we were all expecting this after Rodgers was told he won't be back, but official now. The Jets put on their Twitter, we have officially released wide receiver Devontae Adams. So he is gone. That created about 28 to 30 million dollars on the cap. So now they're at the 50 something mark, and then Rodgers will come into account later on. And another buddy of Rodgers, Alan Lazard, has been told he can seek a trade. I don't know who's seeking a trade for him, but he has been told that. So he'll probably be released within the next week. But because free agency starts about next week, right?
Mhm.
So he'll be released shortly. I would expect. What do you got? Any thoughts on that? I know there are two receivers that we didn't really expect to be on the team anymore, especially with Rodgers being gone. We could have wished that Devontae could have stayed, but it didn't work out. I mean, his cap number wouldn't have been good for this team. And I think at the stage that they're at, I don't know, it doesn't really make any sense for them to keep him around. So we'll see what both of those guys do. I would expect Adams, if Rodgers still plays, I think he would. I don't think it's a guarantee that he would go to whatever team Rodgers goes to. I think Adams is going to look at anyone that has a really good quarterback that needs that number two, because I don't think he's a legit number one anymore. I think he would be a perfect number two for a really good playoff team. So we'll see what happens with that. But I just want to get your thoughts on any of this, any of these two guys officially. Well, Rod Adams is gone, but Lazard soon.
Lazard could do whatever he wants. Nobody wants him back in a Jet uniform, and I'm not sure if any of the other teams really want him in their uniform. The amount of dropped passes that he had is,
Someone will take him though, surprisingly, but it'll happen.
yeah, but the amount of dropped passes that he's had the
Brutal.
last 2 seasons, he lost games because he couldn't catch the ball. And then Devontae, we all knew that was going to happen after with Rodgers. And I wish we could have kept him, but now we have a glaring hole at wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, again, I said it before, off camera, of course, but they're kind of throwing out every little stench that's left of the Rodgers tenure, and these two are probably these are the last two that they'll say goodbye to. But yeah, you're right. That came up. I know we're getting to your four receivers that you said to watch during the combine. They're going to need to take, I think, two receivers in this draft because they have Garrett Wilson, of course, who we love and we talked about all the time. Every episode we have, we try to mention him. And Malachi Corley, who's a question mark just because he was a high draft pick last year,
He
but he
wasn't
didn't
he
play.
wasn't these guys draft pick. That's another problem.
Yeah, he like you just said, it wasn't a Muji Glenn draft pick. So we don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Because I mean, the regime he was picked by didn't see anything in him to put him on the field, which makes no sense after you take him in the second round. So maybe these guys can find something in him. I wouldn't doubt it. He's got talent. He's very quick. He showed what he can do in his limited time. I mean, he did drop a ball going in the end zone, but he showed the speed of getting there, and that's something they need to keep an eye on. But besides that, I don't really have faith in any other receiver that they even have on the roster, and they don't really have any. I don't really think they have many under contract besides those two. And if they do, I wouldn't put any stock into those guys. But that being said, let's move on to combine evaluation. So before the combine last week, you said you had four quarterbacks to look out for: Kyle McCord, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milrow, and Will Howard. I know it was kind of a mixed bag on all these guys. So maybe first take me through each evaluation, and then I'll get you. Then we'll come back and we'll do like a maybe a 1 through 4 who looked the best and all that stuff.
I think Kyle McCord, I have him on first on the list. I think he looked pretty good
Hmm.
for the coming out of Syracuse. I know I said last week from Ohio State he didn't do that good. That could be a problem in the NFL
Yeah.
coming from a school like that. Like you didn't do good against the big defenses. But overall in the combine, I think he looked pretty good. He did have some missed throws, but he was one of the best quarterbacks I think that was there. And then I got Dart. A lot of people are going crazy over him, but from what I watched, he was over. Yeah, you can throw the ball 50, 60 yards down the field, but if you're
Mhm.
not hitting the guy in stride, that's not going to do anything. But he does have a really strong arm.
Mhm.
The accuracy he needs to work on.
Yeah.
Jalen Milrow, his accuracy was not good during the combine. He's another guy, really strong arm. If he can get that footwork and that quick release down,
Mhm.
he could be a good quarterback because he's a dual threat. And Will Howard, he had a couple of missed throws. He was probably one of the better arms overall there,
Uh huh.
but all four of these quarterbacks had a lot of missed throws, and no one really stood out to like above anyone else.
Right. I was gonna say, this is proving everyone right, even us that are believing the fact that these quarterbacks are not really really good this year coming out. And I mean, these four weren't. They're not in the top two, of course, but those guys didn't even throw, and I think they would have probably hurt their stock even more if they did. Maybe not Cam Ward. I feel he's a really really good passer, and he's polished because he's played college for
Mhm.
a while. Shador is a good thrower of the football as well, but he just doesn't have those other skills that I think would have been exposed if he would have did those certain drills. So I think that was both for those guys. It was better off for them not even trying to get in the mix with that. But I think what you were talking about here, these four, McCord, yet like you said, he looked okay. I think in the drills and everything, but he played at that big time school and the production wasn't good. Then he went to a lesser school and the production went up. So it's kind of like you don't know what to believe. And it could have been, yeah, a year of development, go to a different place, become better, but that competition was less. So it's something you got to take into account. Jackson Dart, I think, like you said, he has a really, really strong arm. It's like when Josh Allen was coming out.
Mhm.
I'm not going to compare those two because I don't think that's the same thing. But it's like that they have that really strong arm. I know he threw the ball 60 miles an hour or something. They
Yeah.
said that doesn't mean anything if you can't hit a guy 15 yards. I mean, we know the story of Zach Wilson, really, really strong arm, but he couldn't even make a pass 5 yards away.
Another thing is you can't really go by too much during the combine because you're not throwing with pads on. There's nobody in front of you.
You never
There's no
practice with
there's
these
no
guys.
there's no defensive back.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of things to take into uh
into account.
into account. So overall, these guys could have done better, but I guess with the situation, they did all right. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we can like you said, they were probably average. No QB stood out.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't think they did anything to hurt themselves, but they didn't really do anything to improve. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I don't really think we would expect anything less. But if you were to rank these guys 1 through 4 in performance wise, what would you go with? Nice and quick.
I would go with Dart, McCord, Howard, and then Milrow.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to wide receivers, which is, I mean, we harped on it in the first 2 minutes of the show. Huge, huge need for the Jets. I think they can address it at number 7 with a certain someone like we talked about last week. We hyped them up, especially putting a reel of him on the social media page. He didn't. He liked it. Actually, no, he didn't. He didn't like it. But Ted McMillan, who was not a participant in the combine at all, he was there for meetings, I'm pretty sure, and all that stuff. So we got to talk with teams. I think the Jets spoke with him, from what I remember, but he didn't participate in any of the drills, so he'll stay out of any of the rankings that we give. But Jaden Higgins from is it Iowa or Iowa State?
It was Iowa. He played with. No, it was Iowa. Yeah, it
Iowa
was
State.
Iowa State.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say I thought it was Iowa State,
it
but
is.
you had Iowa listed there, so it is Iowa State. I know he did well for the most part, but you'll
Yeah.
talk about him. Jack Beck from TCU, who keeps improving his draft stock by the day, and Tez Johnson, who is my favorite receiver of the draft. I really hope the Jets can get their hands on him if they can't get McMillan, or even if they do, why not? Go and get both guys. So give me your little scouting report. Jets specialist Ryan Downey scouting report.
Obviously, you said McMillan didn't participate in the combine.
Yeah,
I don't really think he had to because
no, he's
he
fine.
he showed that he can.
He's the
He's
number 2 receiver in the
mm-hmm.
draft, if you count Hunter as one.
Well, I hope Jets can get him. I love that. Jaden Higgins, Iowa State. He ran a 4.47 and
And he's
he's
big.
6'7"
Yeah.
and he's a big body. He's like that guy T Higgins. He's like he can you throw that ball to him in the red zone, he's probably gonna come down with it.
Yeah.
Jack Beck from TCU. He really good hands. The quickness and like the route running is a little shaky, but
Hmm.
the hands are there. Unlike other guys in the draft. And then Tez Johnson, his 40 was a little slow at 4.5 for like his size, but I think like he's like one of those guys that like he's better in game than
Hmm.
combine because if we saw at the Senior Bowl, it was more like a game. and he looked really well. But he also dropped the deep ball from Dylan Gabriel, his college quarterback.
All right, yeah, I like that little note there at the
Mhm.
end. But yeah, Tez Johnson, I like I just said, he's my favorite wide receiver in the entire draft just because of his build. I always root for the underdogs like that because you want to prove everyone wrong. I'm sure his entire life he was told he wasn't going to get to this point, and now he is. So I hope he can wherever team he goes to. I would love for him to be on the Jets, but wherever team he goes to, I hope good success for him. Yeah, I was a little shocked by the 40 time 4.55. I think it's a little too high for someone that
Mhm.
weighs 130 pounds. I wouldn't really understand that. But I mean, it's different. Sometimes when you sprint is a totally different thing than when you're cutting. So that's something you got to take into account. Beck, like you said, from what I saw, he looked really, really good. But the obviously he's developing because he hasn't really played much football before last year. So it's a progression with him from his freshman year all the way to now. So I think that an NFL team, a good wide receivers coach, can get their hands on him and make him into a quality player. And Higgins intrigued me a lot. Being that big and running a 60 less than Johnson did is impressive in its
Mhm.
own right. And just like being that big body type receiver, I think the Jets can look into. Especially, I mean, Lazard wasn't anything for them, but he was a bigger threat. They had him at one point. Mike Williams, another guy they got rid of. Devontae, a bigger guy. He's gone now, so it's Garrett Wilson really, and he's small, so they need a bigger guy on that other side to open up the offense a little more. But if you had to rank these guys, I guess 1 through 3, because obviously McMillan wasn't available. What would you go with?
I'll go with Higgins, Beck, and then Johnson, just because I thought he could have did a lot better than what he did.
Okay. All right, move on to the tight end. So save the offense before we move to the defense. Elijah Arroyo, who was also at the combine, but he didn't participate. He's fine. He'll be late first round, probably early second round pick, regardless. So he didn't have to do anything crazy at the combine. And these guys that didn't participate at the combine, I'm more sure, more than likely they'll participate at their pro day. So it's basically the same thing. It's like a
Mhm.
repeat. It's just that it's a little more private, and you're more comfortable with guys you know throwing a ball to you, making you have coaches there helping you out that you're comfortable with, which is important to some guys, and I can agree with that. But the other two tight ends that did work out, Harold Fannin from Bowling Green. I know Ryan's high on him, but I'll give some notes on him as well. And Terrence Ferguson from Oregon, who I think his draft stock is improving as well. I mean, excuse me with that. But being from that Oregon offense, any guy from that offense this year should get a serious look because they were really really good. So talk to me about those two.
Terrence Ferguson, he really stood out during the combine as one of the better tight ends. A 4.6, 3.40, which
Yeah.
is pretty good for a big guy like
Yeah.
him. I think he'll be like a Dalton Schultz or the tight end from the Cowboys. What's his name again?
Is it Ferguson? Isn't
Yeah,
it
Jake
Ferguson?
Ferguson. Yeah, I blanked
I
on
thought
his
you were
name.
tricking me there.
No, Jake
Yeah, yeah,
Ferguson
it's
and
Ferguson.
Dalton Schultz, former Cowboy. I think he'll be like one of those guys, short route guy. Look for him in the red zone. He'll find a way to get open. I think he really stood out to me. Harold Fannin, I really thought he could have did a lot better overall. 4.7, 140. Thought he in game speed might be better,
Yeah.
but overall he looked pretty good. Besides that, and he caught every ball that was really thrown to him.
hmm And I before I want to give before you give your one, well, I guess 1 and 2 here, but I think the issue could have been for him as well. I know he's at a combine, so he's highly thought of, but different game. The Bowling Green is a totally different game than when you're working out with guys that played at Oregon, Penn State, say
Mhm.
whatever the school is. It's a different thing, and he got to do a little bit more to stand out. But yeah, the 40 was a little disappointing. But he does have good hands. I mean, some tight ends you don't need to be extremely fast. It's just not the part of the game. But if you had to do a ranking 1 and 2, I guess who would you go with?
Ferguson and then Fannin, but if it was overall player like performance, it would be Fannin and Ferguson.
Okay, so it's a little bit of a toss up there. Let's move over to the defense, and we'll start with the defensive line. Another big need for the Jets. I'm sure they'll address that next week in free agency. I think they're going to try to go with a veteran, a veteran or two signing just to kind of bolster that up quickly, and it won't have to count on development because they have a really good defensive line besides the interior of like Quinn Williams, and they got nobody else. But Mason Graham, who's probably the top defensive lineman, like no, inside guy. He didn't participate. He will. He was sat out, and I think he's doing the same at his pro day. He'll be a top 10 pick, so he had nothing to worry about. But he was there cheering everyone on. I know he had he had a little bit of an injury as well. I
Hmm.
think that he's still recovering from it. He didn't want to push it too much, so I think that's a good thing that these guys know that they have a secure spot in a certain draft slot, top 10, and they don't want to push it too much, which is a good thing. But Mason Graham could be someone that is very likely the Jets pick in April when it comes time to that. So that's someone to keep an eye on when he gets to his pro day and fully healthy. But Nazir Stackhouse from Georgia, he was a guy that worked out. Tyleek Williams or Tyleek, I think it's Tyleek, right? Williams from Ohio State, Jack Sawyer from Ohio State, and Josiah Stewart. So you have some guys on there that you didn't really get into too much last week, or no, you did.
Yeah, I got
Yeah,
those
you
all
talked
good.
about these guys last week. I just didn't remember the Stewart one, but he worked out as well for Michigan, so it's a little bit of a Big Ten SEC kind of thing going on here. So usually that's where the good defensive players come from. So take me through Stackhouse, Williams, Sawyer, and Stewart.
I'll start with Stewart. They flashed up on the screen. They were doing it throughout like all the days that like bunch of comparisons to NFL players. He was compared to Azeez Ojulari
From the Giants.
from the Giants.
Yeah.
He's a good rotational pass rusher. He's not that guy that's gonna go in there get you 15 sacks.
No.
But when that time comes for you to play, he's gonna do the job. Jack Sawyer, I wasn't really impressed with him like I was throughout the playoffs. We talked about that all the time. That Jack how good Jack Sawyer looked, but he had a lot of slippages on that field. There was
Yeah.
a lot of guys slipping around on that field. It could have been just the turf or just the bad traction on the cleats, but
Mhm.
he was slipping around. And then two interior guys, Stackhouse and Williams. For bigger guys, they both look really good.
Yeah.
I saw they were doing that figure eight with the
That they look
towel
good
drill.
with that.
They look good with that. They
Yeah.
were probably the best two guys there. Then with the moving left to right, back and forward, they both look pretty good. They didn't slip on the field once, I don't think. So if the Jets can get one of those two guys, I'll be really happy.
Yeah, I was gonna say so. Stackhouse will probably be late first round, early second round, and same thing with Williams. One of them I think will slip to the Jets' second round pick. So to say they don't get Mason Graham, they will have a shot more than likely. If they really like them, trade back in maybe later first round, move up a little bit to get one of these guys because they really impressed. I
Hmm.
was impressed by both of those guys. I think they stood out far ahead of anyone else that was participating in the defensive line drills. And Sawyer, yeah, I don't. I think the combine wasn't for him because he's not the type
Yeah.
of guy that's going to put his hand in the ground or the turf and get up and rush like that. He's not that type of player, and I think that kind of hurt him a little bit. But I hopefully, for his sake, teams can understand that that's not his style of play, and he has more in the tank for sure. Because you saw it during his games
Hmm.
how good he was, and the combine I don't think did him justice. And with Stewart, I don't know much about him, but from what you told me, Aziz Ojolari comparison, that's a good thing for him. I mean, he's a guy that can, especially if the Jets were to take him, they're not going to rely on him to play every down.
Hmm.
Send him out there like a Bryce Huff type thing. Third down, go in there, go get the quarterback, and come off the field. Same thing next drive. So I think he's more of a developmental guy, but something definitely to keep an eye on. Staying with the defense, but moving to the secondary. I think one of my favorite players in the entire draft, uh, Latham or Latham Ransom. I'm gonna go with Latham. I'm pretty sure that's the correct way of saying it. From Ohio State as well. He worked out. I wanted to hear. I think I wanted to know more about him because that's why you're gonna talk to me. And then Andrew Macaba from Texas, and then Shiloh Sanders. We talked about him or mentioned him last week. He wasn't even invited. But I don't think that will be much of an issue if the Jets were looking to get a safety in the later rounds. Didn't really have to talk about him too much, but also I wanted to go back to the defensive line before you talk about your safeties. Just give me your rankings for Graham, Stackhouse, Williams. Oh, not Graham. Stackhouse, Williams, Sawyer, and Stewart before you talk about the
So
safeties.
Stackhouse, Williams, Stewart, and then Sawyer.
Okay, all right. Now give me your little report on my favorite. I think my favorite defensive player in the whole draft, Ransom from Ohio
Yeah,
State.
watching Ransom throughout that playoffs, we were listening to the McAfee cast.
Yeah,
He was going crazy. He
Ransom.
was going crazy over Ransom and Caleb Downs, the one of the best safety duos in the league. Downs will be in the draft next year. He'll probably be a top 10 pick.
Yeah,
But for Ransom, he's that guy that'll be in the box like a Jamal Adams type. But if you leave him deep down the field, like Marcus May, I'll use him as an example with the Jets. If you leave him deep, he's not going to be that type of player. So you put him in the box. Maybe he can even transition to a linebacker,
yeah.
and he'll be good. He's a hard hitting safety. And then Makuba from Texas. I thought he could have done better, a little better, but he's a guy that's gonna make a difference on the game. Like that, he can force that fumble. He can get that interception.
Hard hitting type of
But
safety.
he's also that other guy that can let up that big play that can lose the game.
Okay, so I like that how you said Ransom is more of inside type of guy, like a linebacker hybrid type of thing, and I think that the Jets have now that since they have cap space available, I would go and sign a top safety free agent, and then maybe in the third round you go and get a
Mm-hmm.
ransom, say a Javon Holland ransom safety duo, pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Holland from Miami, who's only 24, 25 years old, is out there, and if I were the Jets, I would try everything you can to go out there and make a move for him. And Mokaba from Texas, you said he's a game record type guy. So two different kind of ways of the play from both of these guys. So I think that's a good thing that the Jets, and you said it as well, like looked at different types of safety. So maybe you have your eye on one of these guys and be like, okay, this is a hard hitting type of guy. Let's go sign a guy that knows how to play that center field type safety thing. So they have options, especially, I mean, when you have no safeties on the entire team, that you're able to do this because you're clearing all everything out at once.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it'll work out a little differently. So if you had to rank one or the other, who had the better day?
I would say Ransom had the better day, and then I put Makuba second.
All right. I mean, I'm not gonna argue with you because you know more than me. You're the Jet specialist. I'm not. I'm just the host here, talking every episode. But what's coming up next for the Jets? So we'll probably have you back next week for free agency. So maybe we could talk about who they should re-sign because I know we mentioned that a while ago, but people probably forgot, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe your opinions changed based off of moves that have been made already. So we'll talk about that because I know there's a few needs, maybe other than what's on the sheet, but these are the top needs for the team. So we'll have you on next week, if you're willing. We'll have you
Mm-hmm.
on, talk about the Jets free agency and what they can do, and then we'll probably give you a week or two off, maybe, unless they make a big move. We'll have you come back in for an emergency episode, and then as the draft build up comes, we'll have you on for maybe just NFL talk as well. Maybe me and you can combine a mock draft together and show everyone what we got. Hopefully, we get the picks right.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, we don't, but hopefully, we do this year. But yeah, we'll have free agency episode next week, definitely for sure, and then we'll see what happens after that. But I want to thank everyone for always watching. Just go out there on the TikTok, Instagram, get some views up for the YouTube. We get a few, and then we don't get a few. It's kind of hit or miss. But Instagram, TikTok doing very, very well, and we appreciate all the love and support from our biggest fans, especially for Jet Specialist Ryan Downey. He's doing a great job. Someone that has never been on camera before this, so we appreciate that coming on and helping us out. But later in the week, we'll have a Knicks Rangers St. John's episode. St. John just clinched the Big East regular season title, like I said they would do on. I said it Thursday, but they did do it on Saturday. I guarantee that one. Knicks playing good ball again, and the Rangers starting to heat up a little bit. Maybe the Rangers can get in the playoffs, and we can have like we did last year, basically every night for the entire month of late April and May. Every night a playoff game for our team. So hopefully that's the case. Baseball around the corner. Juan Soto's killing it for the Mets. I love to always mention Juan Soto at those Yankee fans. We'll have CT Chris Thomas back later this month, maybe before. We'll see if anything uh, comes about. But I know he's in shambles over the Yankees with the few injuries they sustained only a week or two into spring training. So I want to see if he's doing all right. But with that being said, episode 23 is over.